Hey guys, so I wanted to create this video just to go through my process in Zbrush. This is a character I did recently, based on the design of David Boudreau. I'll leave a link in the description for his portfolio. If you haven't checked out his work, I'd highly recommend it. So yeah, I'm gonna just I've recorded a time lapse in Zbrush. I'm just gonna go through it, talk about the process, the thoughts that I'm having as I'm going, decisions that I'm making, both technically or design wise. I'll leave a link as well in the description just so you can see any full renders if you want to check those out. And yeah, so let's get into it. So like this, the first stage of any sculpt, we're starting with a blockout. So we're really focusing on the silhouette and the forms, shapes, and how they correspond together, how they work off each other. You can see here I'm getting anatomical with it, even though this character isn't exactly normal human shapes. Obviously, it's very stylized. But it can be good practice even if you don't necessarily need to get super into anatomy. My mindset is if you do that with every sculpt, whether you need it or not, it'll never hurt the sculpt, and it's always good practice. And it often is necessary because you want your clothing to drape naturally over the body underneath, so it's good to have those good shapes as a base underneath. You'll see later, and I'll talk about it when we come to it. I actually kind of went backwards a bit, where here I have like the fat folds and stuff on the chest, and I have the shoulders defined and stuff. I kind of go backwards on that just because of the nature of the shape of this guy. It was easier and quicker just to kind of remove those elements and just make essentially the shape of the jacket with the body, and then just pull the shapes from that. But it's case by case. It depends. You kind of have to call it how you see it as you go. So we're just putting in more of the anatomy here, getting a big part of this stage. Now you can see the sharp shoulders there. That's kind of thinking ahead of what way the jacket is going to lie on top. And those jackets, they'll have like shoulder pads and stuff, but it's getting that silhouette in early, getting the big shape. So you can see the hat, the peak of the hat there. I'm just putting that in because I want to see where it should go. And so where will the chin be as we're putting it in here? Where will the brows go? Here I'm just literally the primitives brush and just throwing in primitives like you would slapping clay onto a traditional clay sculpture. Just something to move around. So generally we keep things low poly, but sometimes, like here with the nose, we're subdividing it because I want to find out what the shape is and figure that out now. I can always Z-remesh to a little bit lower and then go back into it again with a cleaner topology. So a big part of this process is trying to keep topology relatively clean. We're not looking for a production ready topology out of the gate, obviously, but it's more just topology or edge flow that will help make the sculpting process easier and cleaner. So you'll see it here in the ears. I really go into it here in the ears. So I'm masking out the back loops and then using those front loops to pull those into the ear and define that outer part of the ear. And then obviously using poly groups helps a lot then, because you can just easily just control click on them to isolate them. So you can see there how that topology is kind of helping me make that shape and make it cleanly. And with the lower topology as well, I'm not getting loads of little lumps and bumps that comes from like Dynameshing or whatever. So actually here, speaking of Dynamesh, you can see I Dynameshed the head together here, and I'm starting to get into more proper sculpting, which is really just because I want to get the shapes here correct. And I'm figuring it out, like the side profile and stuff. I'm figuring that stuff out because that's not in the concept. I've only got a front angle, so I'm figuring out what do I want that side profile to look like. I'm not quite happy with it at this stage. but you know, we got to figure out more shapes, and it'll all kind of evolve as you go. So we're breaking the symmetry here. There's no need, again, we're not trying to make a production ready model here or anything, so I'm not doing some kind of a pose neutral face thing that you would do if you were doing it for production, for animation. But we're more concerned about getting that final pose that we want for the render. Like for me, this process, when I'm doing this just for myself, for my own portfolio and so on, it's really, the final image is really the goal, not the model. So the model is just feeding the final image in a way. So you are thinking about how are the light going to hit these angles. That's part of it. Is like how, you know, you see, you're thinking of, that's why you're kind of thinking of how light gradients will happen across the surface. So you might have like a nice curve that goes into a pinch, and then that pulls out into another curve, and then it varies how the light will run along that surface. It makes it kind of dynamic and more interesting visually. So we're still working around the face. I'm trying to get that kind of the chubbiness of the face to read. Again, you can see I've put in the collar there because I just want to see where that collar is going to sit. That's important because it'll help me figure out what the proportions of the face are. Like what's the distance between the front of that collar and the peak of the hat, and how much of the face should fit and how it should fit within those distances. So thinking of that kind of stuff. So we're just getting more parts of the ear here. You can see I just made that planer, so a single-sided plane, sorry, and I can extrude that then, and I'm placing it in. So I'm placing these parts in with the knowledge that I will dynamesh these together later, but as they're separate pieces, it's easier and cleaner to make them that kind of low poly. So you can see here I'm using the Z modeler, and these kind of things can be easier to do in software like Maya, but for the sake of doing that kind of thing, it's not too bad. It's just you have to collapse each edge as you go along, rather than, you know, in something like Maya you could just select all those edges and just collapse them. So figuring out the peak of the hat, and then we'll get the center stage of the hat now. So this part was kind of tricky because this in the concept is like super stylized, right? But I wanted to read at the side, from the side profile and stuff as well, you know, for the turnaround. And I don't want it to feel like a fin or something strange. It works in the end. But I didn't know, I was debating on how much should I pull that front of the cap up in relation to the back. Yeah, so we're just fitting the hat, trying to get the hat to fit nicely on the head. And then these ears kind of bend underneath the hat. And again, having that low poly. If this was like Dynamesh or whatever, like there's so many polys now that need to move and it gets messy and you have to re-sculpt into it. Where having that lower poly count really helps with that. So we're doing some details here in the face with the Damien standard. Using the smooth brush, going lower on the subdivision levels, and then just using the smooth brush to like flatten areas out, or if you when you're smoothing, if you release shift, it'll average out the faces rather than just polish them, so you can get your curve back and get a nice even curve. So just pulling in the sides of the temples and the cheeks there, trying to figure out like where the kind of bony parts of the face start, if you like. So you get like this distinction between where the brows and the cheeks kind of sit into the rest of the head. So this part was I had to get some reference for this part. I was thinking, how does a cigar sit in someone's mouth? And I was thinking, do I open the mouth a little bit, or see, maybe I'll see some teeth a little bit, you know? And I had this image of kind of the cigar sitting in the teeth like a cowboy. But when I got some reference together, and I think I seen like reference to Al Capone and stuff, and it's kind of like the lips are really pursed around the cigar. So I was trying to get that right, because obviously in the 2D it's there, but it's a loose sketch, so it's, you know, it's not like super fleshed out, where obviously with the 3D I need to really figure those things out, and that's usually a big part of translating 2D to 3D. Especially it depends on the project you're on, the studio you're in, all these sorts of things, where you may have to do that kind of thing, like work from a very sketchy image rather than some, you know, super fleshed out turnaround. Like, it's not always the case, so it's a very good thing to be able to do, and something that you should practice doing too. You know, you'll need to do some of the design yourself and figure these things out, and have a good idea of shape language and anatomy and so on to fill in those gaps when you're doing your 3D, because the 2D can't answer everything for you. So just, yeah, getting in, trying to get a kind of fleshy feel now, get those folds in. I think I'm using the Geo brush that Pablo Munez made. Yeah, it's a really cool brush. It's essentially the damn standard, but it's just got a nicer pinch to it for flesh. So here you can see now I'm moving away from that anatomical shape, because I just want to get that kind of jacket shape that's in the 2D. Bringing those arms out. Now you can see I'm bringing the arms straight down, because in the final pose the screen right arm is straight down and the screen left arm, his right arm, is bent, so I can just bend that after the fact, rather than putting it in like a T pose or an A pose and then having to move them in. I'll just put them where they need to be in the first place, because again, we're not trying to do some production ready, animation ready model here. So now these are the elements that will be under the coat, and I know I won't see a lot of it, so there's no need to make like a full vest and a full shirt underneath, because you won't see any of it. The jacket will cover it, so I'm only putting it in places where the jacket, you'll see it underneath the jacket. So again, just refining these shapes of the ear, face. Still have to do that cigar. I think we do that later in the process, as far as I remember. So there you can see I'm making it black because I just want to see that silhouette, because I'm still not sure about the side profile on the face. I'm not happy with it. It's too slanted backwards. And by the way, so now we'd be on day 4, where, you know, just working away in the evenings, kind of after work and stuff. So we're on the 4th day of sculpting, just in case you're curious about how long this takes. I'm not sure how much Zbrush speeds this up, but there's probably maybe 5-6 hours gone into it so far. So here you can see I'm doing this in ZBrush with ZModeler. I'm extracting it from the shape underneath with a mask. So you can definitely do this kind of thing with ZModeler, and that's clean topology. Like that's like that kind of topology absolutely could work. Like a lot of the topology here is more than clean enough for a production ready model, but obviously there's not like a proper topology on a body underneath that's deformable and all those kind of things. If you don't know about that stuff, it is something actually I'd like to cover in either a stream or a video in the future, just to kind of go over what you want out of a production ready model for animation, and for doing blend shapes as well if you need to do blend shapes. There's a number of things that make up what good topology is. It's a tricky subject to cover in a way, because there's no definitive topology that's the correct topology. You know, it really depends on the needs of your character, and also you kind of want to think about what future needs might be in your character. If you're working in like TV or whatever, and you know there might be a season 2 and you want to be able to add an outfit or whatever, or just in general, if a character needs to have a couple of different outfits, like it's nice to have topology that you can pull, like topology on the body that you can pull clothes from easily. That also works for rigging. So there's a bunch of things that you kind of want to be thinking about. But for this guy, anyway, we're really clear. Yeah, I think I actually collapsed some edges on the back there, or I think I just added a support edge, just to make a little pinch for the elbow. So again, just dynamesh the whole head now, so that's all one piece, and I'm just cleaning up the kind of artifacting from the Z remesh. Just make this all nice, smooth out areas where, you know, two meshes met. Sometimes what's nice about this is on some areas obviously you want that nice hard edge where two meshes were intersecting, and you get those for free. And then some areas you want to smooth them out, so that's what we were doing just there, just smoothing out. So you don't really ever either want like a super hard, especially on flesh, super hard edge, but even when it's not flesh, you don't necessarily want that, because where the specular highlight is along the edge of the crease, you'll get like artifacting, you get aliasing, so you'll get like, rather than a nice clean line of light along that edge, you'll get like, it'll be like dotted, like pixelated. So you have to be careful of that. You kind of want to back away from it a little bit, like take your camera away, pan out a little bit, and see, does that edge look right from, you know, a relative distance? Like is it you could even test render it, you know, to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen, because it looks very unnatural, it looks very 3D. So that's something to be really cautious of. So here I'm trying to do this hat again and get some clean topology that I can work with within Zbrush, and it's just fighting me. So I think after a while I just go into Maya. I think I go into Maya for a few little pieces here and there from this point onwards. Still have to do that cigar, but the jacket is in. Now we've got that arm bent, and I can make the rest of this sleeve now. So really, I mean, I break a lot of the symmetry slightly in the whole body at one point here and there, but in terms of this jacket, really I could make the whole thing symmetrical bar that arm, so it was just a good way of saving some time. Quick turn there. Yeah, and this is a hand from another model I'd made that I just repurposed here. I just stuck it in, that's why you didn't see me like sculpt that out initially. But I have to do a lot of work, a good bit of work on it to kind of get it working with this character in the way that I want. It needed to be less planar and a bit more round, and a bit thicker. So I've subdivided it there. So I was trying to think of the pose for this, because in the concept it's, you know, it's just fairly straightforward out pose, but I was trying to think, can I, like, you know, do something with the pinky or something, but ultimately I thought keeping it simple was actually kind of better. I don't want some complex hand shape that kind of draws the eye off the face and off over to the side of the piece. So now we've got to do the hair. So I'm just masking that out. Obviously you won't see the top of this hair, it's not really necessary to do it, but no harm. So just getting the hard edges there so that when I Z-remesh it will give me topology that will keep those hard edges, those sharp corners. And just extrude it in, and now I can start sculpting on top after I subdivide it a little bit. So here I'm just going in with the Damien standard, back and forward, smoothing a little bit, just to get some kind of nice planar cuts across the hair. Using a bit of clay polish to pull it back and then sculpting into it again, which I think I actually do that maybe 2 or 3 times, just sculpt into it a good bit. And the thing is, when you sculpt into it, you tend to get like, it's not a clean 90 degree, or not 90 degree, but it's not a clean angle where you create a peak or a valley. It's got a bit of bumpiness to it either side, so clay polish can help to just give that a nice clean angle. And then you can go back in, smooth a little bit and so on, because clay polish can also create that kind of overly sharp area, so you might want to go back in and just touch it with the smooth. You know, just keep it light but touching it with the smooth. So just bending in the fingers here for this fist. And I'm also sculpting into it. You know, you can see there I'm using the pinch brush to like create sharper angles on the knuckles and stuff. Again, just to keep that nice stylized, thick, kind of blocky, chunky look. And fill in those fingers. I don't want like gaps and stuff. Like, it doesn't feel sturdy, it doesn't feel chunky, so like close everything. I'm trying to close everything off there. You can see I've subdivided here now, just sculpting a little bit on it. Get the nice planes and volumes. Run along the knuckles there and get a nice line along the knuckles. So here I'm just separating out the fingers with polygroups. Trying again about that pinky, just to get something, just a little bit in there, just to give a bit of life to it. There I'm just going along the knuckles, I don't want like a bend there where your knuckle would usually be, like as if, you know, it's the inside of your arm or something, just so that we know that there is something there for the knuckles. So here I've extracted with a mask to get the trousers, and I've created these polygroups because I want a crease along those polygroups. I want lines down those areas, so I've created those polygroups so that when I Z-remesh, I can Z-remesh by group, and it'll give me an edge exactly where I need them, so I can create creases or like stitching folds on the sides, and then, you know, like on those kind of pressed trousers, like as you can see there, I'm creating that crease. And I can do that with just a couple of support edges. So now we're getting into the pose on the legs, so I just need to turn that leg out. Still need to do the shoes. The shoes, I kept the model pretty simple and did a lot of detail in the texturing. I knew I could use like the paint along path tool and stuff in Substance, if you're familiar with Substance, to do a lot of the work in there rather than modeling it, which I've done both ways now. I hadn't done shoes like that in Substance, and it was just a good excuse just to play around with Substance a bit more, because I've done it before in Zbrush. So it's more just for, you know, it's pick your poison. Add in the pocket here and the handkerchief. So again, sometimes like that looks like it popped up a little bit. What I'm actually doing, and Zbrush doesn't record that, is I'm using the topology brush and I'm drawing out some really simple topology, and then extracting that as a plane, and then I'm adding in loops or whatever where need be, and essentially kind of box modeling it from there. Just closing off some loops here in the back to make this kind of V in the back of the jacket. Fixing up the collar, make sure it's clean. The nice thing about working with a plane here with stuff like clothing is you can then extrude, and you've got a nice uniform thickness on all the edges, right? So which with clothes is the way it would be. And if you do need to thicken it up, because it's giving you two different poly groups for each side, you can always just mask the poly group and then use the move brush to thicken up, you know, like to pull out parts of it, so you can get that, like parts of it that might be thicker for like whatever design reasons you want. A lot of this is, it really is like, this kind of thing came from, it started from wanting to have more control over the base shapes and curves and edges and so on, and also from experience I had with traditional sculpting, where, you know, with traditional sculpting you can work in separate pieces and then you kind of stick them together, right? So that was the thought process when I started. After when I was initially learning Zbrush, and you know, I was using the Dynamesh method, and you know, that has its place without a shadow of a doubt. It's not to say that that's the wrong way to do it by any means. Depends on what you're doing, right? But for this kind of thing, having that control over those lines and curves and stuff like you would if you were doing 2D, I find this method quicker, because it's just not fighting you as much, because you don't have to deal with so many verts, so much topology that's just wants to be bumpy, kind of, when you're running brushes along it. So I've subdivided this, and that's I'm creating the folds literally just by essentially brute force. You can see there, using masks is really easy, but like just digging in with, you know, clay build up, Damien standard, and then smoothing that back and reworking in and doing that again, kind of rinse and repeat and that, so you get those bigger folds, because you want it to feel designed, right? You don't want to just have like just Damien standard and just kind of zigzag across it a little bit and call it a day, or you know, you want something that feels designed. Folds can be really tricky, especially in style, like you're not using Marvelous Design or something. You've got to stylize these, so you've got to really pick which folds you want. You'll see in a little bit here, I'll start getting into like, wonder could I add a fold here and a fold there, and especially on this sleeve, I think, yeah, like here, to try see, can I make this a bit more intricate and it still look nice. And essentially we're playing around here, right? Just seeing what can work. But ultimately I decided, no, let's keep this area clean, because it's just standing out too much from the rest of it, a little bit too much. So just trying to decide here, how do I want, like, how do I want this fold to curve and run along the arm? How much detail do I or do I not want? So we moved on from that now. Just add in those buttons. Easy, it's just a insert mesh. And something to keep in mind, especially when you're doing stylized, it's very easy to be like, well, you on a vest, you get some reference, and there's like 7 or 8 buttons down the vest, say for example, whatever it is. Like, keep those, like, when you're doing stylized, you'll often want to go, to get that chunkier feeling, you're gonna go like in this case, go less buttons and make them a bit bigger, because you're looking for an easy read, meaning that the viewer can very easily visualize and separate out elements because they're kind of simplified. Because I mean, that's what stylized really means. At the crux of it is that it's simplified in an aesthetic manner, I would say, is what stylized means, loosely at least. So just pulling out some pockets there, super simple, just a mask, pull out them. Last couple of little creases there. Pinching that fold on the arm. Adding some planar shapes there on the fist. Like, at this stage, we're most of the way home. It's just moving things around, just make sure everything works together. Seeing what else, is there anything else I can add here? Like, you can see here, like maybe a fold on the back. And then again, we're getting into like, how complicated do I want this fold to be? Again, here we're doing the same thing now on the other side. And part of me knows, look, this is probably not going to work, but I'll give it a little try, see if we find something. Pulling this out now from the front. This is a good example of, like, from the front you won't really see. You're not going to see. It's not like in the like in a 3/4 in a silhouette, you barely even see that. But it's how the light will run along it. So just give a little volume where that pocket is. So here you can see that cigar. I made that in Maya as well. I just went into Maya and I think I took that cylinder and brought it into Maya and just quad draw around it really quickly, like super low poly, and then just subdivided it and added some edges. I do the same thing here with this ring because I want to extrude out here, but then I need some support loops going in the right direction so that it smooths right. Don't know what I'm doing with the hair here, it's completely pointless, but I'm kind of playing around. So the eyebrows, I was trying to figure out what to do with the eyebrows, because I didn't want to just have, just simple flat eyebrows. I wanted some detail there, and I kind of know I want a detailed edge along the outside. So you can see here, I kind of figure it out as I go, and I'm really happy with how the eyebrows turned out in the end. And there's a bit of clay polish there, and then playing a brush and going back in, just kind of moving things around with the move brush and sharpen things with the damn standard. See here, I tried something else. I tried to mask this and then extrude it back into the head and then smooth the outer edge, but it did not work at all, as you'll see here. Yeah, see, I just abandoned it. So I go back, I just leave it for now. But I know I got close to something there. Oh, here we go, we go back into it. So yeah, this works. And then this is just with the damn standard, just cutting into it a little bit. Get some nice planes and nice kind of cuts into it. So again, I'm using the trim dynamic to kind of flatten those areas out. Again, going in with the damn standard, and just increasing the size of the damn standard for the bigger ones, the bigger creases. Trying some simple eyelashes. Don't want anything over the top, obviously, with the eyelashes. For a male character, it tends to look wrong if you start getting too finicky with the eyelashes. It looks more feminine. This is bottom eyelash, and I wanted something there, but you can barely even see it. It's fine, but it's no harm. Just wanted something there to kind of, it's like putting thinking 2D, like you're just putting a line there, and it kind of helps to outline the eye, and it doesn't have to be an outline, it just has to kind of go in the right direction. Your brain fills in the rest. So we're just adding the thickness here, cleaning up that top edge that was all messy from the projection earlier. Get that nice thickness, and you can see as well with stylized clothes too, you're going thicker than real clothes would usually be. So I think this is just like an insert mesh thing I had duplicated for the laces. Thinking about how they fit in those shoes. The collar came later on that vest. It's just something I found in reference that I like the look of. Adding a chain here for like a pocket watch that will be under the jacket. Gives me a nice excuse as well to add some more variation in terms of the materials later, to add some kind of gold. That was the idea of putting the ring on his finger as well, and he actually has a wedding ring on the other hand, which came from the idea of if you've ever seen The Godfather, and he says to a guy, you spend time with your family, because you can never be a real man if you don't spend time with your family. So here's the turnaround. We're all done with the model, and at this point then bringing it into Substance Painter and Arnold for the final render. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you learned some things, hopefully something you can add to your own processes when you go back and sculpt your own characters. So I'll leave, as I said, a link in the description so you can see any of the final renders and turntable. And also I'll leave a Linktree link for any of my social medias or anything like that if that interests you. Alright. Okay, so thanks for watching guys, and catch you next time.